Howdy, folks. Owen from EMF here, and we have another episode of EMF TV, episode 12, I believe. We have Dr. Karen Coghlan of Nut Coach fame, of Ignition Nutrition fame, and of PB Nutrition fame, an online, offline nutritionist coach based up in Dublin. So, Karen, if you would be so kind as to just tell us a bit about yourself, what do you do, and kind of how did you get into the health and fitness industry?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try to keep a very long story short here because I could go on for half an hour with this because it was not the most direct of routes, I suppose, into the industry. I got into it just over 3 years ago now, well into my 30s, after kind of a career in academia, studying biomedical engineering, kind of the design, creation of medical devices, that type of thing. So my background is engineering. That's kind of what I am. I see myself as kind of like a problem solver, love sitting down, figuring out things, working things out. Kind of if I see myself in a position where I can help, I will, sort of thing. You know, I'll always be the first person my dad will ring if he the remote control starts working, or that sort of thing. So it's always just kind of the problem solving side of things. But all the years while I was doing that, I was also on and off diets like crazy, like on a diet, off diet, on a diet. Each time was a different diet. Weight Watchers, paleo, maybe a little bit of intermittent fasting, ketogenic dieting, even as a vegetarian, which just makes no sense whatsoever. Then trying a bit of if it fits your macros type of thing. So a little bit of everything, even trying to combine them. So maybe paleo diet combined with if it fits your macros, all sorts of crazy stupid things. Basically just looking for the holy grail of nutrition. I was never massively overweight, so I don't kind of have a big transformation story for people. I was overweight kind of after a couple of years of dieting, which makes no sense either. So slowly but surely, just over the years, the weight just got more and more. Even though I probably started off as what you would think is probably a pretty healthy or normal weight. And then it just came to breaking point in my early 30s. I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm absolutely sick of this. There has to be a better way. And I was lucky enough to be in a position where I was in academia in Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, where I was doing a postdoc research project there. And I was in a good position in that I had access without having to pay subscription fees or that to kind of the science, the peer-reviewed literature, kind of all the actual evidence-based published material that kind of to nutrition. So, after 11, 12 years in college, you would think I would know that nutrition actually is a science, but for some reason it just didn't click. And I went and eventually just started reading it. I was like, oh my God, like, how do people not know this? It's quite basic. It's quite simple. There's not a lot to it. And then once I kind of started wrapping my head around that and moved away from the stupid fads and the extremes, and just started kind of finding that kind of balance, kind of sustainable approach to my own life, I was just like, you know what? I have to go off and let other people know about this. So in a way, there was a kind of a transformation, but more so probably with the approach to it rather than a physical transformation. So then I kind of decided just to go pursue the studies part-time, which I did. And then I thought I'd give myself a couple of months kind of doing it part-time, but that didn't last. It lasted a month. So in May 2014 was my first part-time month, and then I was full-time in June 2014. So that's kind of where it came from. A mixture of my own personal history as well as kind of a discovery, I suppose, that of the actual science behind nutrition, because I think with a lot of the stuff on the internet, people kind of see it more as like kind of like a religion or an opinion, or people get very dogmatic. It's religion or nutrition isn't something that you believe in. It actually is a science. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from. The two kind of things together, kind of just figuring things out as well as my own experience, and just trying to maybe let other people kind of in on the whole secret to the whole thing. So
that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, you've a phenomenal story. Do you find, or how did you manage to make your messages, or your content, your delivery on social media so relatable and so easy to understand for the layperson? Because you came from such a scientific background. it's almost stereotypical. Someone with your background would be very heavy on the minutiae, and the average person can't understand. Were you
Mm.
always able to break things down that well? And if you aren't, what kind of helped you really digest it and then speak about it in such a good manner?
Yeah, so I think even though I spent 11 years in college studying and, the whole engineering thing and the research, and, some people said to me over the years, oh my God, that like doing a PhD for, like, I will say nearly six years of my life, people say, God, what a waste. And I said, are you mad? I said, I wouldn't be in the position I am now without all of that experience. So for me, while I'm not applying the content of my PhD, I'm definitely applying the kind of the skills I learned. So I find the skills that I learned during that PhD highly, highly transferable. So while I was engineering based and the type of writing kind of was quite technical, at the same time, it's not all that different to kind of writing, I think, about nutrition and people's approaches to nutrition. You have like the problem and then kind of, well, how do you go about solving it, and then the kind of the actionable steps for people to take afterwards. So that's kind of how engineering works as well, just kind of figuring out the what, the whys and the hows. It's not necessarily going down and breaking it down into really detailed stuff about amino acids and protein and that type of thing. It's more kind of the application of the science, and that's kind of really what engineering is. And even during my own ride up with my PhD, I kind of just said to my supervisor, I said, look, I said, feel free to kind of correct the kind of the technical content, but in terms of the style of writing, I said, don't bother, because I kind of just have my own little style. I think you just develop it yourself from practice over the years. So, when I was in school studying English, I was terrible. I had to get grinds just to pass English for Leaving Cert. So, like, it's not as if I'm good at English or that side of things. I think it's just the technical writing is just kind of a whole thing that I just kind of naturally it's just like putting together a jigsaw. Like, you kind of throw all your pieces out and go, right, what have we got here? What goes where? What goes together? And just kind of building it from that until eventually you kind of build it up into a bit of a story. So I think that was absolutely fundamental, getting my business up and running initially. The writing side of things, absolutely, and then just telling a story. I think other people do find niches for themselves. Some people like doing videos. I know you're great on Snapchat and your Insta stories and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, really?
For me, I do watch them all. I watch them. I do laugh. But for me, like, I don't know, I tried the videos and that sort of thing, but writing is my thing, and I'm just kind of trying to stick with it. I'll do the odd other bits here and there as well, but the writing has definitely helped. And then just being able to translate it in a way for the people to understand, and adding in my own little personal twist as well. And that just really, really makes it relatable, because people are like, oh, so she's been through that as well. And they don't feel so isolated and alone when they know other people have kind of been through it. So it's kind of like a unique combination, I think, kind of to have that kind of skill with the writing side of things, as well as adding in the kind of the relatable personal side of things.
Yeah, brilliant. And you've been featured in various magazines as well and publications.
Yeah.
So it's obviously you're on the right track. Definitely.
Yeah.
And talk to me about your clients, or the type of client that comes to you. Why might they come to you, and what do they usually present with wanting from the services that you offer?
Yeah, that's a real easy one. When I'm talking about the Ignition Nutrition side of things, sports nutrition is obviously very different. Well, not very different, but different. When it comes to Ignition and nutrition side of things, it's basically people coming along and they're fed up. They've had enough. They want to try another way, and they're just basically fed up of going round and round and round, up and down, up and down, up and down. And it may take them a long, long time to come to me as well. Like, I have people who follow my page for maybe over a year before they kind of decide to take the plunge, or so they say, and they're always very nervous or anxious or whatever, because they think it's going to be something that they won't be able to do. And their only regret afterwards is kind of to say, geez, why didn't I do this, when I first started following your page? Because I think for a lot of people, they use dieting as a crutch, and it's something that they find very hard to let go of, because they either don't trust themselves, and they think they're going to spiral out of control if they don't have kind of a set of rules or boundaries to adhere to or abide by. So yeah, that's the type of person, people who are just like, and a lot of the times they just say, God, you just make so much sense, so, I'm ready. And it takes some people a long time to come to me. So it's funny, and I can always tell, not tell, but I can kind of see the people commenting and liking here and there, and eventually they might come into the group and introduce themselves, and I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize you from the page, sort of thing. So yeah, like that's kind of who that target audience really is. It's people who are just sick to the back teeth of that type of restrictive, negative, kind of, lowered self-esteem type of dieting. That's the kind of, they're the type of people that mostly come to me.
Very good. What are some of the most common myths or misconceptions you deal with so initially when getting these people off the ledge almost?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one, I think it's starting to die out a little bit now, but when I first started up, pretty much everybody came to me who had tried and failed at paleo, because I think that was really, really popular, kind of 2011, 12, 13 sort of thing. So in the early days, a lot of people coming to me, having tried and failed at paleo, and they just found it so miserable that they couldn't stick with it. Most of them will have reported that they lost weight while following it, but after the 30 days or so of kind of going back to normality, all of the weight came back, and this type of thing. More recently, it's probably the low carb thing. A lot of people just following low carb, no carb. And again, when people follow that kind of restrictive approach for so long, they actually end up developing fear of the food that they've been avoiding. So carb phobia definitely is a thing. So that kind of can start off as just maybe carbs, but then it can kind of start going a bit more extreme where they have to start avoiding sugar as well, and then all sorts of artificial sugars and this. So it just kind of goes on and on and on and gets more extreme. So when people have been avoiding foods like that for so long, they just kind of develop this kind of fear, and it's like overcoming any fear, just trying to get them to slowly reintroduce it back into their diet, kind of wait a couple of days, see that they haven't blown up, into, size of a big balloon or whatever. So yeah, it's that type of thing. The big misconceptions is that the biggest one is that people think that a certain type of food will make them fat, and it's just trying to get them back into the understanding that it's not any one particular food, it's a build-up of all food regardless. So trying to get people more aware of portions, that's another huge thing. People, they just don't understand that portions actually matter, and they think it's just a certain type of food. So I can eat as much protein and fats as I want and I'm not going to get fat, but then they kind of realize after a while, well, that this isn't working either. So so probably that one, that's the biggest one, definitely.
Yeah, you've some of your recent writings about good versus bad food have been excellent, and it's definitely a topic that people just find hard to move away from. Leading on from that, and I know I've asked you this before, if someone sees in mainstream media and social media lists of 5 foods to avoid or 5 superfoods or this is the way or don't do this, do you have any tips or any red flags you would tell people to look out for, going, right, that's bullshit, so you don't need to worry about that? When you see a study come out that says red meat is a similar carcinogenic as cigarettes, and you possibly have people message you and you're going, oh my God, I might die eating this ham sandwich, and you're just nearly going, oh, I know what my post tomorrow is going to be about.
Yeah, exactly. So again, like I've said to you before, I think this is a really hard question just to answer, kind of to address all of it kind of in one. You kind of have to look at it kind of breaking it down, the bullshit individually, if you know what I mean. So like if people talk about a list of banned foods, chances are they really don't know what they're talking about. If people if they promote any kind of extremes around food, so if they say, well, to kickstart your diet you have to do a sugar cleanse for the first 2 weeks or the first 30 days, whatever, chances are they're not so up on their nutrition either. Things like that. So anything that promotes extreme. So if there's an elimination of complete food group or a banned list of foods, that type of thing, it's kind of hard to give one tip. You kind of have to address all of the individual bullshit, if you know what I mean. Again, with the whole red meat and the carcinogenic side of things, again, like these studies are, they're not, the people who are writing these articles, they're misinterpreting the science massively. They're one probably sentence out of a journal article that has maybe 5,000 words in it, and they're just cherry picking this one little piece where the scientist or whoever, the writer, the author might have said something like, it may do this in 2% of a population somewhere or another, like that. It's the same with the sugar myth as well. Like, that information has massively been blown out of proportion, and the context is all wrong when it comes to sugar and the amount of it that is allowed in our diet as well. So again, you kind of need to look at the individual kind of bullshit misconceptions and that sort of thing and break it down, and again asking the person who's kind of sharing the information will the reason why behind it. And another giveaway a lot is if people kind of say, well, I believe, again, nutrition's not a belief, it's not an opinion, it is a science at the end of the day. I know we have to like kind of bring the anecdotal side into it as well, because one way is not going to work for everybody, and just because a high protein diet is safe doesn't mean you have to eat high protein. So you kind of have to bring in the anecdotal side of things as well. So again, if people say things like, oh, I believe, or this is what worked for me, and they're not kind of willing to explore the other options, well then, that's kind of a bit of a sign, a bit of a red warning flag as well, that particular person doesn't really know a whole lot. And I think the last one as well is addressing the underlying psychology to food and dieting as well. So if people aren't going to consider, individuals, so your own lifestyle, the reasons why behind certain food choices, your behaviors, your attitudes, your approach, that side of things. So if people just give you a list of rules and say, eat this, don't eat that, eat at this time, don't eat at this time, chances are they're probably not very well up in it as well, because the underlying psychology behind dieting is absolute critical when it comes to kind of the long-term side of things. Your list and your regulations and your rules, they will work. I'm not saying they won't, but they'll only last for a very short amount of time before you kind of start breaking the rules. Absolutely. And rebelling against the diet.
Absolutely. It's kind of the January mentality.
Yeah.
Do it for 4 weeks and you're good to go till the next year then.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's another actually question I wanted to ask you. It leads in nicely. Like all of these funny diets are these questionable characters who help people lose weight. Nearly all of them do lose initial weight. How do you find, or in some of the most successful people you've worked with, let's say, were there any commonalities with those that kept the weight off? Long-term weight management, the holy grail of what we're trying to do is not just get people to lose weight, but to get them to change their lifestyle so that weight loss is just, the new person is in front of us forevermore, and they can maintain that life then.
Yeah, so it's people who, it can take a different amount of time. Some people just kind of get it straight away, and then other people, it takes them a while to learn it. They actually need to live and learn, and they need to learn kind of from the blips and the slip ups and things like that. So it's for people who have kind of lasted in the long run with me, they're the people who have really kind of let go of the gung-ho approach, so that they're not coming in and going balls to the wall with it. And they're like, while I don't give rules, I definitely do provide guidelines and structure, but people might come in straight away and start applying them as rules and trying to do everything 100%. So they just try to make far too much change overnight, and they think they're great, and I'm like, yeah, woo, and they're feeling really good. But then, maybe it could be just towards the end of the week or even a month later where they kind of start slipping backwards a little bit because they just haven't been able to sustain the changes that they try to make. So, I just kind of have to just help people learn from that. We'll say, look, well, why do you think it didn't work, sort of thing? And it was just like, well, I just tried to do too much all at once. So it's just kind of dialing it back a little bit and saying, well, look, what changes can we kind of initially make that aren't going to be too difficult, and just kind of building on it from there. So for long lasting change, it really kind of has to be an habitual approach to nutrition, where people often say to me, God, Karen, you're like casting some kind of voodoo magic witchcraft sort of stuff on me. And I'm like, because they just all of a sudden find themselves doing these things without really kind of thinking about it, and they just naturally start to do it. And I'm like, well, that's not me. That's the habits kicking in. So a habit is something that you kind of repeatedly do without even really noticing. So initially, when you're trying to set up the changes and you're trying to set up the habit, sure, it is going to be a choice, and it might be a choice that you might need a little bit of discipline to implement in the beginning. But if you repeat it often enough and you start kind of reaping the rewards from that choice, you're more likely to keep making that choice again. And when you do that, that's kind of where the habit thing starts to form. And that really is the bottom line for people when it comes to the long term side of things. They don't even think about it anymore. So while people come on board initially, all that's on their mind is food. What can I eat? What can't I eat? What time do I have to eat? Am I even hungry? Oh God, I don't even know if I'm full. Oh, and they're overthinking it, and eventually, the people who have long term success, they're the ones they're chilled out, they're relaxed. Food isn't on their mind anymore, and once they've kind of gotten rid of all of that kind of thinking time out of their head, they've so much more free time for other kind of things in their life as well. So it's great to see the kind of the mindset side of thing kind of spill over into other aspects of their lives as well. So they're not all consumed with kind of stressful and anxious thoughts about food. They're just going about their day and just having a kind of happy old life, really. So that's kind of, I think, the bottom line is trying to get things just kind of something that's normal, like just a lifestyle, to be really, really cliche about it.
That's absolutely brilliant. It's kind of body and mind. We
Exactly.
we're not robots, and we can't be programmed to eat X amount of calories to lose Y amount of weight. Can you expand on any of those habits that you kind of get people to start off with? Anything we can try and help a few people out with today?
Really basic ones. I'd say 99% of the population is not hydrated, so they're dehydrated. So water is a big one. Mm-hmm. So again, when I say to people, oh, you should be drinking, for your size or whatever, and your activity and all that sort of thing, up to 3 litres of water a day. Of course, they go and they try and drink 3 litres of water tomorrow.
In one go.
Next thing they know, they're sitting on the toilet and being kept awake at night time. And then because of the negative repercussions of that, then they go back to drinking no water again. So again, it's this all or nothing thing. So you don't need to go all in. Just because I say aim for 3 litres of water doesn't mean you have to do it tomorrow. Even if you just start by drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, I actually think that's a really good tip. For any kind of habitual change, breakfast is always a really good time to start. For most people, obviously not everybody, but most people do have a kind of a morning routine or a breakfast routine. So because routine is kind of part of a daily thing, which is what a habit is, it's a great time to start introducing change like that. So water is always a great one. And then just trying to get people to start tapping into their hunger cues as well. So a lot of the time people just, I suppose with the convenience side of things and just having kind of constant access to food as well, people just like pick and graze throughout the day as well. So just kind of maybe setting kind of an eating routine for yourself as well. So kind of letting yourself go hungry between meals. A lot of the time people associate hunger with, oh my God, the world's going to end sort of thing. But, hunger is kind of
gains.
natural.
I'm going to lose my gains.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all part of it. But it's also learning to cope with hunger. So managing your hunger as well. You don't need to let yourself get to the 9 or 10 on the hunger scale type of thing where, you'd kind of eat a scabby donkey sort of thing, getting to the hangry kind of thing, kind of letting yourself get hungry enough. But then knowing if you do get hungry, that food is literally around the corner and it's not a big deal to go hungry in between your meals. So again, trying to get rid of the kind of the grazing and the snacking and just kind of have more structured meal times. So maybe every 3 to 4 hours if that's what suits you best, maybe every 5 hours if that's what suits you best. Again, it's kind of up to the individual to find what works best for them. But breakfast, the water thing, when you're kind of up and running with that, then you can kind of start to look at the different types of food. So I work with a lot of women, and protein is probably the one macronutrient that they all under eat on. So that would be one of the first ones I try to get done to try eat a bit more on typical Irish breakfast. There's a load of carbs for breakfast, some kind of roll for your lunch, and then you're meeting 2 veg for dinner. So the protein really only features in the dinner side of things. So again, it's just trying to get protein in every meal rather than just the one meal a day. So they're kind of the few practical side of things that I would start with mostly.
And you would, more often than not, would you wait until those are achieved before adding any more, or kind of trying to shotgun approach, give them all the habits and see which ones that work and which ones don't?
Yeah, well, I won't ever pick what's best for them, because I'll give them, well, here are the choices that we have. Which ones you think you're going to benefit from most now? So they get all the information at the beginning. But then again, you will have people who will just try, even though I say just do 1 or 2, they'll obviously try and go and do them all. But they'll learn from that. So it's not the end of the world if they do. And 9 times out of 10, nobody actually does just one thing at a time. They will try and do, but it doesn't take them long to figure out that actually, shit, that actually is a little bit too much. So again, it's kind of up to them to work with me and me to work with them both ways, to figure out, well, what change are you actually going to benefit from the most? Because when they start seeing those rewards straight away, that's going to spur them on to kind of keep going as well. So it has to be something that they're going to benefit from straight away. So that's why the water works great, because it helps people kind of distinguish people thirst from hunger. And they also have more energy as well when they're feeling more refreshed and revitalized from the water and all that sort of thing. And then the protein has a great feedback straight away, just in terms of the fullness cues. So because of the kind of the satiety feeling that it gives people, so people just feel a lot more satisfied from their meals. So even though their focus was adding in protein, they by default might actually stop to do other things at the same time. So while the advice is eat protein, they actually have stopped snacking. So my advice isn't stop snacking, it's eat protein. But again, that feedback just kind of is positive right from the get-go, and then that just spurs them on again to kind of keep making that choice in the future. So
brilliant. So we're nearing the end now. I'll try and wrap this up as best I can. Second last question. The most important thing Karen Coghlan has learnt in 2017 thus far?
Yeah, I wouldn't actually say I've learnt it. I'm still learning. So big one, I think most people, if you have been following me from the beginning, you might have seen that my first 2 years, half of 2014, 2015, half of 2016, just all guns blazing, coming in, shouting off, saying this, blah, 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 blah. Causing all sorts of trouble, getting myself in trouble, causing a little bit of upset, hurting people's feelings, maybe with a few things I've kind of said. And yeah, that was all fun and games for the first little while. But then I think I'm a great person to give advice, like, don't be what other people think is none of your business sort of thing. And, don't be worrying about what other people think. But slowly but surely, I just started to let other people's opinions or views or negativity maybe slowly but surely creep into my head, but without maybe fully realizing it. So in the last year or so, I think I've definitely kind of calmed down a little bit quieter, to the point where I think I actually even stopped putting out new content. I was just kind of rehashing old stuff, and just almost out of fear of how it was going to be interpreted by other people, because people do have a great way of pulling things out of context. I say things like it's just food, in terms of it doesn't have any morals attached to it. But then you'll have other people go, no, of course it's not just food. It has calories and burgers are fattening and, you have to eat your vegetables stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. But I'm just saying that, it's not all about, morals when it comes to food. So in that regard, it's just food. We haven't committed a crime or, an indecent act or anything like that. So, people love to pull things out of context, and that kind of stopped me, I think, a little bit from putting out me and kind of my own content and my own kind of perspective on it. So again, it's just kind of going from that all to nothing. So I think that happened a lot with my business in the first couple of years. So now the last couple of months, I've just been focusing on kind of reining that in a little bit, trying not to be so gung-ho, but at the same time, trying to keep kind of my own integrity kind of attached still there, still kind of putting out the same message, but maybe just perhaps in a more diplomatic way where it might be a little bit more well received with people. I think the giving out kind of thing only works in the short term as well. While it did gain a lot of attention in the short term, I don't think that's going to last in the long term. So again, it's trying to figure out how can I actually get some longevity in the game as well. So definitely from a business perspective side of things, it's trying to figure out the long term type of thing. And the last few months has been big for me in that. So a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on, and I'm kind of getting there. I think I'm kind of finding my voice again, but maybe just in a bit more of a kind of a diplomatic way, maybe.
Basically, you're saying you're mellowing in your old age, huh?
I think I am. Yeah. A big thing I did was take out of the business over the last year was me. I actually took me out of it. My Instagram account was all about selfies, media, and this and selfies, media, and that, as well as the kind of the food and that sort of thing, and posting meals. But I actually just set up my own personal one last year because of that. Because at the end of the day, it's not about me. I'm actually not like, the attention is all well and good for the first while, but I don't know if it's for me. It's not really for me. So I'm even playing around with trying to figure out business names. It was Nut Coach initially. People might have noticed that it's changed to Ignition Nutrition because, again, the coach is me. That's about me. Whereas Ignition Nutrition has more scope in terms of branding, I think. If I actually want to grow the business and, develop it into something more, I think it kind of can't really be about me anymore. So lots of learning in that regard over the last couple of months. Still not sure what exactly is going to happen, but I'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I'm sure whatever you're going to do, it's going to be a good success because you're a breath of fresh air, the info and the knowledge and the way it's backed up. So please don't quit or don't stop. Anyway, just keep going and keep a little bit of giving out here and there. Just keeps you sharp. So last question we'll finish on. You'd be a fan of the Dublin footballers, but I believe the smart money says Tyrone by 3. Your thoughts?
Down with that sort of thing. You're mad.
Down aren't playing at all. It's Tyrone. Typical Dub. Doesn't even know who they're playing. Like, they're going to win anyway.
Oh, up the Dubs.
Up the Dubs. Well, look, all right, Karen, thank you very much. And this is take 2 as well, everyone, so you know that because didn't record the first time, but these things happen. Hopefully this one will. I will link Karen's Facebook's website in the show notes so everyone can please go follow her, go check her out. You won't regret it. Karen, thank you very much.
Thanks,
and hopefully we'll get you on soon. All right.
Cheers.
Bye.